welcome back to That Backyard Property Pod, another mini-series. I'm still on tour. I'm in Melbourne, and today we are talking rentvesting. What a buzzword. What does it even mean? Rentvesting is where you buy a property while you continue to rent somewhere else. The reason people are doing this is because they may want to live in Bondi, but they can't afford to buy in Bondi. How do you go about this? Find a rental, continue renting where you want to live, and buy a property in another location. The reality is people are wanting to get on the property ladder, but it is becoming harder and harder as the property prices increase. The hardest property to buy is your first one. So rentvesting is a really good, crafty way of getting on the property ladder whilst still being able to live in Bondi or somewhere near the beach or wherever it might be, or in the CBD. So what can rentvesting do? Get you on the property ladder. The other benefit is that you can generally borrow more. How do you go about this? Well, if it's an investment and it's generating rent or yield, then the interest is generally tax deductible. Obviously seek accountant tax strategy, but it's generally tax deductible. This means that the interest is effectively added back in the borrowing calculations. We can also use proposed rent for the property you're intending to buy. And we only need to include the rent that you're currently paying, which is quite amazing. So all of a sudden, your borrowing capacity has gone from A to B over here because you have firstly got a tax deductible debt, and we're using proposed rent for the whole property. So of course your leverage or your ability to borrow money has increased. One key thing to note though is if you're doing this, then you don't have access to the first home buyer incentives. So maybe you buy, live in it for 6 months or whatever the requirements are in your state or territory, and then go back to renting in the location that you want. One really important thing to note for rentvesting, and we've done this a lot recently, is you can still use a guarantor. So if you have a family member that has a property and they're willing to help you buy a property, then you can use their property as security so you don't even need a deposit. We recently helped someone buy in Melbourne, rentvesting, so they're still living in Richmond, they're having a ball, and they've bought an investment property. We use Westpac because Westpac will do two things. They'll allow mum and dad, in terms of this case, mum and dad can have their debt with one bank and Westpac can still do the security guarantee. It's called a second mortgage. Not all banks do it. The other is they would allow a guarantee or security guarantee for an investment property. Most banks will do a guarantor want you to live in the property as your home. Westpac will look at it a bit differently and they'll let you use a guarantor for an investment property. So if you're in that situation and your parents or family are really wanting to help you get into the property market and you can't quite afford in the location you already live, then maybe rentvesting is for you. Borrowing capacity is increased because of the rent and the tax deductibility, and you don't theoretically need any savings because you've got the ability to use a family guarantee. If this is something you're looking at doing, we have helped so many people do this over the journey, and it's such a fantastic way of entering the property market. Reach out, give me any questions you've got on this because I would love to help. Otherwise, like, subscribe, do all those cool things that I'm not cool enough to understand. And I cannot wait to see you again next week. See ya.